Mike Bako joins us now for more on the 2022 Winter Games. He's the sports editor for thedailynational.com. So, Mike, we've talked about the Summer Olympics, but let's go to Beijing next year. Let's begin with the status of venues and facilities for the Winter Games. Despite the pandemic, does it appear everything's on schedule so far?
Yeah, amazingly, it does seem like everything is on schedule. By October, they'll have not only all of the venues already completed, all the venues tested, but they'll also have the Olympic Village already done. So when you think about the last 200 days, that's the home stretch, but they've been planning for many, many years now, not only in the terms of the infrastructure of building out these venues, planning for when the games are actually going on, but also as important to that is building up the enthusiasm locally and nationally for this event to take place. Speaking about the Summer Olympic Games, Japan completely against having the games going on. Upwards of 80% of the people polled say that they don't want the games. Almost a complete reversal for the Beijing Games. Enthusiasm is high, but also on the horizon in those next 200 days is what's going to happen with COVID.
Well, what lessons are being learned right now for the Tokyo Games, and could that be applied or considered when it comes to the Beijing Winter Games?
I think really the lessons are going to be what happens after the games take place. Certainly just leading up to the start of the games on Friday with the positive tests for some of the U.S. men's basketball team members. Coco Gauff, the tennis star, ruled out with COVID. A couple of the players from the contingent from the South African side testing positive and having to go into quarantine. So I think right now the officials from Beijing and the IOC as a whole are watching what is going on with these games. Are the athletes testing positive before they're even arriving? How many events will be compromised by positive tests or people going into quarantine? And then certainly the after effects of what happens. Certainly no visitors, attendees taking place, but what happens with the positive infection rates for athletes that do come, traveling parties, sponsors that are there. All of these things are going to be things that are going to be examined by the Beijing team, hopefully learn from, as you mentioned, as they have these 200 slightly less days once the Tokyo Games are going to be completed.
Yeah, I mean, winter athletes are training as we speak, and no doubt are also watching what happens with the summer athletes right now amid this pandemic. What do you think are some of their key considerations? Do you think some of them would want to be vaccinated before the games? And what are some of the other things they're thinking about as they're trying to prepare in the 200 days ahead?
Not only are the athletes probably thinking about and reconsidering if they're not vaccinated, but also different national Olympic committees, should they make it mandatory that athletes have vaccinations? There's not been a push from the Beijing organizers in terms of making it mandatory, but that might all change from the IOC down after these Tokyo Games. If it does become an issue, if the games do get compromised. Speaking earlier, we mentioned that the anticipation is probably high that leaders going into final rounds and medal consideration may have to bow out, or entire events may be scrapped because of this. So these are all things that people are probably going to be thinking about, learning from. One of the things that is in favor from the Beijing side of things is that local infection rates are low, vaccination rates are high, as opposed to in Japan right now, where vaccination rates and infection rates are both high. So if you're an athlete and you're planning and you're thinking, and if you're an Olympic federation and a nation, you're probably planning and thinking about quarantining your athletes that are in training. You're probably thinking about those final weeks leading into your travel plans of thinking, how can we best isolate these athletes, not only from their families, their friends, possible infections, but also from themselves in some way. So I think there's going to be a lot of segmented and regimented systems in place and learning from what's going on right now with Tokyo.
A lot more bubbles ahead. Mike Bako, great to see you again. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.